How do I read a CSV file in Python with inconsistent columns? Imagine you're trying to organize a big list of data, but some rows have more or fewer columns than others. It can be frustrating, right? Well, in Python, there are ways to handle this smoothly. When working with CSV files that have inconsistent columns, the first thing to understand is that some rows might have fewer or more fields than others. This can cause errors or misaligned data if you try to read the file normally. Using Python's built-in CSV module is a good starting point. It reads files line by line without forcing all rows to have the same number of columns. You can open your CSV file and create a reader object. Then, you can check the number of columns in the first row and compare it to each subsequent row. If a row has fewer columns, you might want to add empty strings or none values to fill the gaps. If it has more, you can decide whether to ignore extra data or process it differently. For example, you could write code that reads each row, checks its length, and then pads shorter rows with empty strings to match the first row's column count. Another approach is to use the Pandas library, which is popular for data analysis. When you try to read a CSV with Pandas readCSV function, it expects all rows to have the same columns. If they don't, Pandas will raise a parser error. To fix this, you can set the header parameter to none, which tells Pandas there is no header row. Then, you can specify the number of columns you want using the names parameter. For instance, if your maximum number of columns is 5, you can set names to a list of 5 numbers like 0 to 4. Pandas will then fill in missing values with nan, which stands for not a number. This way, your data stays in a rectangular shape, making it easier to work with later. After loading your data, you might want to clean it up. You can fill missing values with fillNA, or remove rows with too many missing entries. Sometimes, you might need to combine or split columns to fix misaligned data. If your CSV has inconsistent delimiters or some corrupted lines, it helps to preprocess the file by removing or fixing those lines before reading it. Here's an example using the CSV module. Open the file, create a reader, read the first row to get the expected number of columns, then loop through each row. If a row has a different number of columns, you can log it or pad it with empty strings. And here's an example with Pandas. First, determine the maximum number of columns in your data. Then, read the CSV with Pandas readCSV function, setting header to none and names to a range of numbers matching the maximum columns. This way, Pandas will automatically fill missing spots with nan, keeping your data organized. By understanding your CSV's structure and choosing the right method, you can handle files with inconsistent columns easily. This skill is especially useful in automation and scripting tasks where data might not always be perfect but still needs to be processed efficiently.